What's up, Mob Crew? I'm Chris. In today's video, we're going over where could have Alex Murdaugh hidden the weapons. A week after the double homicide, Alex did something very odd, and I believe this is a huge clue that could lead to where the guns could have been hidden. We'll go over that and much more in today's video.
This is Alex Murdaugh at 4147 Moselle Road. I need the police to answer immediately. My wife and child just got badly.
Well, on the night of June the 7th, 2021, a 911 call came in. At first, this just sounds like a man who is in distress after discovering his son and wife dead at one of the Murdaugh properties at Moselle. When first responders arrive, we soon see Alex Murdaugh coming out of the darkness with a clean white t-shirt and shorts. He seems to be distraught, but as you watch his demeanor closely, it changes on a dime from frantic to calm back to frantic.
It's bad. Check the pulses.
Yes, sir. Right when you called, or did you go to the house first? Where is the house?
I came to the house first. What are they doing? Can they hurry?
They are. Yes, sir. That gentleman that was out here already, he's okay.
And then I knew they had been down here before I left to go to my mom's.
Okay.
And so
After more law enforcement show up, the atmosphere turns eerie as the crime scene does not make sense. In the beginning, they were thinking that Paul could have shot his mother, Maggie, then turned the gun on himself. But later that night, they would realize Maggie Murdaugh was shot multiple times with a .300 Blackout rifle with shell casings laying all around, and that Paul had actually been shot twice with a shotgun, but the angles of how Paul was shot were very odd, with the fatal shot being at a high upward trajectory. And since Alex Murdaugh had a clean t-shirt and shorts on, that must mean he couldn't have been the shooter, right? After one initial interview with Alex that night, he told SLED that after the three of them, Paul, Maggie, and Alex ate dinner, Alex would take a nap. Meanwhile, Maggie and Paul went down to the kennels. When Alex awoke, he wanted to go check on his mother, who lived about 20 minutes away in Almeida, while leaving Maggie and Paul down at the kennels. After being gone for about an hour, Alex would arrive back home with no one in the house. So he went down to the kennels where he discovered their bodies. But according to Alex, in that interview, he checked on both Paul and Maggie, where one would think Alex would have instantly gotten some kind of blood on him if he actually tried rolling Paul over, who was laying in a pool of blood, and supposedly checked their pulses and then called 911.
and I ran over to Maggie and actually, I think I tried to turn Paul over first. I tried to turn him over, and I don't know, I figured it out. His cell phone popped out of his pocket. I started to try to do something with it, thinking maybe, but then I put it back down really quickly.
After that first night, SLED was left with more questions than answers, and Alex was certainly keeping secrets that would eventually get revealed. On June 8th, SLED would search the Moselle property and discover some more disturbing items. They would immediately start discovering .300 Blackout rounds that were spent near the home, and they would actually test these shells, and they discovered that these shells were fired from the same .300 Blackout rifle that was used to shoot Maggie. The Murdaugh family had a gun room with several guns, including a .300 Blackout that belonged to Buster Murdaugh. They had tested it and discovered this was not the Blackout used on Maggie. They also found shotgun ammo that even matched the brand used on Paul, but they couldn't find the exact shotgun that fired the two shells on Paul. Although Alex was seemingly being cooperative with SLED, they noticed he wasn't being very detailed when it came to the events of that day, and was always vague in his stories. They would also learn that there were two Blackout spots for the kids, but Paul had lost his, and so a third Blackout was purchased to replace Paul's first one. This .300 Blackout rifle was unaccounted for, along with Paul's Benelli shotgun that was most likely used to shoot Paul. Eventually, SLED would get their hands on 2 videos that Paul had recorded on his phone. One showing Alex being filmed by his son Paul just a few hours before the double homicide, and Alex is clearly wearing different clothing than what he would be seen wearing later that night. Then probably the most damning evidence used against Alex Murdaugh was a video that Paul had filmed just minutes before they were shot. It shows a dog named Cash at the kennels where 3 voices can be heard: Paul, his mother Maggie, and his father Alex, who said he was never at the kennels that night.
Hey, he's got a bird in his mouth! Bubba.
Hey, Bubba.
It's a guinea.
This is a chicken.
They would eventually arrest Alex, and after being charged with double homicide, he would be found guilty by a group of his peers. Alex Murdaugh would receive multiple life sentences, with more charges to come in the form of stealing money from his own clients. But what happened to the weapons used in the double homicide, as they were never found? During the trial, we heard from Miss Shelley, who was the caretaker for Alex's mother, who lived in a house in Alameda. She had Alzheimer's. During the night of June the 7th, 2021, when Alex supposedly left Maggie and Paul at the kennels to check on his mother and arrived around 9:22 that night, the GPS tracking on his vehicle shows him parking in the back of his mother's house, and this next part is crucial.
But what do we see? From 9:22 to 9:32, we've got 195 steps taken.
So there is 6 minutes where Alex had arrived but had not gone into the house yet. But there was 195 steps recorded in a 10-minute time frame, in which after the first initial 6 minutes, he walked into the house and lays down in a bed next to his mother. So how did he record so many footsteps if he had just arrived, sat in the Suburban for a bit, and then walked into the house just to lay down next to his mother? I believe this is when he could have taken the guns, which at the time were wrapped up in a tarp and or raincoat, to conceal them, and hid them somewhere on the property, and could have had one gun wrapped in a tarp and the other wrapped in a raincoat, causing him to make multiple trips, which would then cause the Suburban systems to start up multiple times by walking back and forth.
We've got 2 system startups. And what did you hear from Shelley? That he called, but it still took a number of minutes before he came in. And that's about 6 minutes right there.
Alex would only stay about 10 minutes and then leave back to the Mozilla property. Then just 9 days after the double homicide and 3 days after the funeral of his father Randolph, on June 16th of 2021, Alex would do something that was very odd. He would show up at his mother's house early in the morning at 6:30 a.m. without calling Miss Shelley. He had always called before showing up and never came that early in the morning.
Say that again.
6:30 that morning.
Did he call you and tell you he was coming?
No.
Had he called you on June 7th and told
Yes.
you he was coming?
Yes.
And he was right outside the house?
Yes.
And this morning at 6:30, he did not call you?
No.
How did you know he was on the premises?
He knocked on the by the bedroom, yeah, the window.
Knocked.
Yes, on the wall.
So that day on June 16th, Alex left his cell phone at the Mozilla property, and instead of taking his Suburban, he took the white Ford F-150, which did not have any OnStar or GPS tracking in it, and drove to his mother's home. Miss Shelley would let Alex in and saw that he was carrying something blue in his hands. I believe it's possible he had the blue tarp wrapped over the blue raincoat, as Miss Shelley clearly remembers seeing a tarp that was at one time laid out over the chair and left there.
A blue tarp, blue something in his hand, something blue.
A blue something in his hand. And can you show me how he was holding it?
Like this.
Is it all right if I touch it?
Yeah, this one.
How was he doing it?
Like this.
Holding something like this?
Yes.
And what did it look like? Was it vinyl?
It's like a tarp that you put on a car, you keep your car covered up.
Big thing.
Yeah, blue. Yeah.
And was he holding it like this?
It was holding like this.
Could you tell if there was anything in it, or do you know?
No, I couldn't tell.
After Alex went upstairs, he came back down, told Shelly he was leaving, and this is when things get even weirder. Instead of taking his own vehicle, he takes his father's white Ford F-150 and leaves. After being gone for about 10 to 15 minutes, he would arrive back at his mother's home. This is probably when Alex could have disposed of the weapons.
Did you think he'd gone?
I thought he left, yes.
Okay. Did you see him after that?
Yes.
Tell them where, please.
He came
That
back.
morning.
He came back to the house.
Was he driving?
The white truck.
And whose white truck was that?
I'm thinking it was Mr. Randall. I thought it was his truck. He had the white truck also.
He had a white truck also? Okay. So when you testified Mr. Murdaugh coming back in a white truck, that was Mr. Randolph's truck?
If Alex was gone for 15 minutes, we would cut that time in half, and we would have 7 minutes, and going, say, an average speed of 30 to 35 miles per hour would give you a radius of about 3 miles. And within that radius is a river that would be a great spot to dispose of the weapons. There was actually a search done by sled at that very river just 2.5 miles from the Almeida property. Unfortunately, they never found anything, but it just so happens that his brother John Marvin has property close by that is within the same distance from the Almeida property, where there are lots of swamps and hidden paths that run along many small bodies of water, including parts of that river. Now, I'm not implying John had anything to do with the disposal, but it wouldn't be a stretch to think that Alex would know about this property and have access to it, and would be able to dispose of the weapons there, and it wouldn't take long for him to get rid of the weapons and then head back to his mother's house without being gone for too long. Once Alex came back, he immediately left in the truck he came in. And this whole scenario of not bringing his cell phone, not bringing his Suburban, and switching vehicles clearly means he was up to no good and most likely disposing of evidence. This case was a wild ride with many twists and turns, but we have covered this case extensively on this channel, and if you'd like to check out our reenactments, there are links below and at the end of this video. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Do you think the guns could have been hidden close by? Please smash that like button and subscribe if you're new to the channel. If you'd like to support this channel, please consider becoming a member, and thank you so much for watching.